Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by Crowcast. And it's a pretty happy weekend to be talking about footy for a change. With me, as usual, are my cohorts. Nikki, how you going, Nikki?
I'm going fairly well.
Fairly well. And Macca, how are you, mate?
No, good shape.
Very good, very good. Obviously, a bit to get through tonight. A great win by the Crows on Saturday afternoon, evening. But lots more to talk about, so let's get straight into the scores roundup. Okay, Thursday night, the Tigers and Sydney played out a pretty good game. Richmond getting up in the end, 14 goals, 993 to Sydney, 11 goals, 1. Amazing kicking there, 67, a margin of 26 points. Did you guys see that one?
I did. Very frustrated that Sydney couldn't beat them. They're going to be very, very hard to beat again on their own dunghill that they play on all the time. They actually didn't even play on it this time. They just had the advantage of not having to travel. But their secret is just basically they've got a very even bunch of guys having 100% go.
No, unfortunately, I was out to dinner, so I missed that game.
Yeah, I was a bit depressed because
feel
Richmond did so well.
Yeah, was that a hot date, Nick, or?
No, it's a regular thing we've been doing for well over 10 years or so now, where we go out once a month, the whole group of us. I can recommend Farina 00 on King William Road, but take your earplugs along because they've got concrete floors and so there becomes a very noisy restaurant. But the food's lovely.
Awesome. And that's the Weekend Wrap brought to you by whatever that restaurant was.
Yeah.
Friday night we had the Bulldogs and the Cats. That was a pretty good game, very frenetic game, played at a high pace, and the Bulldogs getting up 16 goals, 7, 103 to Geelong, 15, 11, 101. Harry Taylor muffing his lines at the end there.
Yep, certainly did. And interesting young player in the game was young Narkle for Geelong. He very talented looking youngster, and he quite exciting youngster as well. No, it was quite an enjoyable game, and the Dogs just showed that when you put 100% effort into a game, it's you can beat most teams.
How do you reckon the Cats are going, Nick?
I think the Cats are overrated, and I think they have been for most of the year. And I think this is them slowly coming back to the pack. They're not playing at home as much anymore because they get that little inflated help. So I was quite delighted with that result, even though I hate the Bulldogs. Yeah,
and it's been commented on the chat. Geelong don't have ability spread all around the ground. They've got 3 very good players in the midfield, but they don't have a great deal of talent. That's what made me talk about that youngster who burst on the scene and played very well, because there isn't a lot of other youngsters out there doing very well. So I don't see Geelong as having a long-term great future.
I think that's something we've talked about for the past couple of years a little bit, that their depth is very shoddy, like Port's as well. And if they get injuries, etc., to those higher ones, and as I'm trying to think who it was in the chat who said they pretty much just rely on 3 players. And if those players, if you can kind of shut them down a bit, you're a decent chance to win a game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hawkins showed a bit for once, but I do think they're a bit one-dimensional. I mean,
but that's also, he's showing a bit against a team that doesn't have big defenders.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, very good point, Nicky.
Yeah, exactly right. Anyway. Come on, Macca. Just hold your fire for a minute. Let me get through the scores before you start at each other's throats, for God's sakes.
Okay.
Saturday, a good bunch of games on Saturday. Port I didn't think they looked terribly convincing against Carlton. I know Carlton were up for the fight with Cade Simpson's 300th, but Port took a long time to get rid of them. 13 goals, 12.90 in the end to Carlton, 10 goals, 9.69. So 21 points against the cellar dweller. And if I was a Power supporter, I wouldn't have been overly convinced with that.
No.
Well, when they have a completely scoreless third quarter against Carlton, they're getting a Cockwomble nomination for that later on. But it was interesting because we were on our way into the ground. So, of course, I'm just watching the scores coming down. But it seemed that it was only that one end of the ground that was kicking end. So was there a bit of a breeze going on, or was it just something weird happening that day?
I noticed that too.
But it didn't really show very much breeze up, though, Nicky. I mean, the kicking didn't seem to be affected overly much any one way.
Yeah,
and yet it was all pretty much scoring was that one way. And once I knew that Port were heading in that direction in that last quarter, I was like, yeah, they're going to win this.
Yeah.
Just purely because it seemed to me they're just kicking towards that end.
Port certainly struggled to beat them. And in the end, ultimately, I suppose their overall class did tell. But to me, the real pleasure I got out of watching that game was watching young Charlie Curnow. He is going to be something very, very special.
Yeah, he's a star, isn't he?
And considering we took Millerer and didn't take him.
Yeah, given our stocks too.
I wish you hadn't said that, Nicky. You just reminded me.
He was the pick after, and remember, he'd just had a DUI.
Oh, God. Yeah,
okay. He'd just been done for drink driving.
Wow, that's a.
So he slid quite a way back past a lot of other teams. So he was picked. He's officially picked 12 in that draft.
The interesting thing is, though, the people, the teams that take a gamble on people like that and draft them for talent, not for necessarily how they behave, because they work on the theory that they can get them to behave and join in the team's culture. I'd certainly endorse that.
Yeah, well, given our key position stocks, it would have been nice to have him on the books. Anyway, we got Fogarty, so... look, Collingwood had a reasonably comfortable win over the Suns. The Suns kind of hung around a bit, but Collingwood 14 goals, 15.99 to Gold Coast 8 goals, 12.60. So 39 points in the end to the Maggies. They kind of won the game and then sort of just waited it out, really.
Yeah, I never saw that game, and I'm not sad that I missed it.
Yeah. And the Giants had a good win against Hawthorn, although I'm not sure how you rate Hawthorn. I mean, as much as they belted us, they really should have belted us by 20 goals, and I don't think I've seen us play that bad. So, 13 goals, 17.95 to 13 goals, 6.84. 11 points in the end at home. I don't think it signals the Giants back in the hunt just yet.
No. Sorry, Nick, I was just going to say it flatters Hawthorn because they had 11 more scoring shots and a lot of those should have been goals as well. So I don't think GWS are a genuine premiership contender by any means, though they've got a fantastic midfield. There's some really dynamic players go through there. But Hawthorn, I think you're right to query them, Fiend. To me, they're a middle-of-the-road team, and we played shockingly against them. That was when we looked like an absolute disorganised amateur league side rather than an AFL side.
Mm.
I unfortunately tipped Hawthorn for that game, bastards. And I think it actually would have been a different game if Gunston played. As simple as that.
Possibly.
I think Gunston is, because they've been playing him down back and playing him a lot more, very like Lynch, that very much that link man between the arcs, and he's such a clever footballer. This year he's done so many drives and got them going forward, and he delivers the ball beautifully. I think he was a huge loss to that Hawthorn team.
Today, another couple of good games. St Kilda doing us a massive favour in terms of our own top 8 prospects, getting over the line by 2 points in the end, 18 goals, 1119 to Melbourne, 18 goals, 9117. That's a loss that's really might come back to bite Melbourne on the backside later in the season.
Yeah, I watched that game and it was enjoyable to watch because I was barracking against Melbourne because of the draft situation and with us holding their first round pick. And the lower they finished, of course, the better for us. But I thought they were very, very disappointing, Melbourne. I think they never at any stage they genuinely looked like winning. I see the comments being made, no Lever, no Melbourne, but certainly they do miss him. There's no doubt about that.
Well, they're not as tight defence. Pardon me. If their midfield doesn't get on top, they struggle to hold teams to a score. So, and that proved to be the case today. Essendon and North, I didn't see this.
Just on that game, if anybody wants a laugh, go to the Twitter, the hashtag for that game of the AFL. I think it's D's Saints. It is freaking hilarious seeing once again Melbourne supporters throw the baby out with the bathwater and having a massive tantrum.
It's good, isn't it? It's good, isn't it?
Oh my God, do they overreact? It's hilarious. Apparently the whole team's filth. They should just give up the season now and Goodwin needs to go.
Anyway, today as well, entertaining game. I didn't see it, but I heard some of it on the radio as I was driving around. Essendon getting up in the end 19-11, 125 to North 16-12, 108. Margin of 17. Also doing us a favour.
They did. As I said last week, I enjoy watching Essendon play with their absolutely gut and run style of footy, and they're a pleasure to watch actually because. It was North Melbourne. They played pretty well as well, and it was a real shootout in terms of the score. But Essendon just that little bit better.
Well, you just don't want to get into a shootout with Essendon because they've got a lot of pace and they play that kamikaze style. And I didn't really note North at any stage trying to shut that game down. And you've got to stop Essendon's run. They play on confidence.
I watched the last quarter because we got home from the SANFL game in time to watch the last quarter. And honestly, there were opportunities for North to win that. They had to keep trying to win it. They couldn't shut it down. They had to keep playing very proactively. They got so many leg ups from the umpires with a lot of illegal holding on Ben Brown. And it was so blatantly obvious he's either being shepherded out of the contest, really obviously, or well and truly off the ball, making sure he's on the ground so he can't even get there to contest a ball coming in. I actually think North could have won that game if they were umpired fairly.
Nah, bullshit. No, I don't agree, Nicky.
Well, considering the way he kicked one of his goals, it should have been a goal, but there was some stuff, Macca, that was just shocking.
Yeah, but
absolutely shocking.
But Nicky, there were mistakes all around the ground all day. I mean, you can't.
No, I only watched the last quarter. That's all I saw.
Well,
it was really obvious that they were hanging on to and they were impeding him.
Look, I watched 4 quarters and I thought Essendon deserved their win. And look, and Fiend, he's 100% right, of course. If you're going to play the same game,
right? I mean, that's not hardly even worth mentioning, Macca. But go on.
You're on a better strike rate than Dickie so far. No.
Excuse me, what happened before we started recording? So you be quiet.
Keep going, Macca.
Yeah, she's actually thrown me right off. Because they are very good at their gut and run game, and if you try and play the same game as them, they're going to get you. Yep. So Fiend's quite right. You've really got to slow the game down and play at your tempo, and frustrate them, and make them take chances. Yeah, that the percentage-wise aren't the thing to do. So
you've got to make them. You've got them. It's a bit like the tennis analogy, Macca. Take your finger off the button. It's like the tennis analogy that Leighton Hewitt used to play. Make the guy hit one more shot. I think with Essendon, you've got to make them make one more kick, one more possession, because otherwise they're just 2 or 3 kicks from one end of the ground to the other and away they go. I mean, you can't have a game against the Bombers where you're kicking 23 goals in a half a footy. You're not going to win that many games against them doing that. Anyway.
I haven't got a button to put my finger on either, by the way.
No, sometimes it just comes back. I don't know why. Anyway. And the last game, I reckon, is a bit of a warning to the Crows in a couple of weeks' time because the Lions aren't the easy beats that their ladder position would suggest. Getting over Fremantle, who beat us a couple of weeks ago, 18 goals, 11, 119. Love the way there's a few 119s in this week. To Fremantle, 9 goals, 10, 64. So a very big win away from home by Brisbane, probably the hardest road trip for them. And we're going to have to be playing well when we meet them at the Gabba in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't see that game. I was all watched out by that stage. And I see that Fife did a hamstring in that game as well.
Yep.
Yeah, he did it in the second quarter, but he was non-existent in the first quarter, Macca. So their loss of Sandilands in the warm-up they turned into a bit of a rabble.
Yeah, but the guy that they brought in for Sandy when we played them did pretty well, from memory. Was it the same guy?
Yeah, but they lost. I'm not too sure. I'm not sure if it was or not. But yeah, they were just a bit interesting. And we've commented that even though the Lions hadn't been winning, they're playing a really good brand of football. And I don't think there's anybody in the AFL who's been scouting ahead are underestimating the Lions.
Yeah, well, I think you do so at your own peril. Because they're not, as I said, they're not a 7th, 8th ranked team. If you ask me, they would beat the pants off of Gold Coast and probably Sydney at the moment. Not Sydney, St Kilda at the moment. So anyway, look, let's get on to the main event because it's well worth talking about, shall we?
Get ugly. Damn, that's ugly.
Well, that song was appropriate for the first 3 quarters of our match. And then it got interesting after that. Look, Adelaide in the end, overpowering West Coast, 12 goals, 16, 88. 10 more scoring shots, it's worth noting, to West Coast, 12 goals, 6, 78. A margin of 10 points in the end. And welcome back, Adelaide Crows. Finally, someone flicked a switch and we all turned up in the last quarter.
Yep, it was a horrid first 3 quarters. There's no doubt about that. We really looked very terrible. And, I wouldn't mind $1 for every swear word I said during the first 3 quarters. Because I'd have a lot of money if I did. Because really, they stuffed up everything. And it was, the choices were poor, the way they moved the ball. There was not much to recommend the first 3 quarters by us at all. But apparently Pikey said to them at 3/4 time, just have a go. Then they took every restriction off them and just told them to have 100% go and just move it as quick as they could. And I tell you what, the way we played in that last quarter was very reminiscent of us at our best last year. In that last quarter, we became irresistible, and I love it when you can get momentum up like that. And that's happened to us a few times over the last year or two where teams have done it to us. And it was interesting to see what the West Coast coach said. He made the very point that we had such momentum up, there was no way we could be stopped. So I'd love to see us transport that confidence, that self-belief and that style of game into our next week.
It was a 4-quarter pressure effort. So whilst you talk about the first 3 quarters being ugly, yeah, it was, but we put the pressure on them all over the ground. And I was kind of confident going into that last quarter, weirdly I was, because
what did you have when you went out to tea on Friday night? Did you have some sort of mushrooms kind of thing? No,
I had a very nice pizza.
The mushrooms on the pizza, surely.
There was no mushrooms on the pizza. I don't eat mushrooms. They're horrible.
Not knowingly.
Nope, I don't eat them. They're the funny thing was that there was such a murmur from the crowd because the umpiring was not good. And
I want to comment on that afterwards.
And just the crowd, like even at halftime, and Jenkins coming off the ground was interviewed, and he was talking about it, and he's like, "Yeah, we're not getting it up forward, or we're not kind of nailing any of our opportunities up forward. We've just got to get that finish off better, but we're actually fairly okay with how we're playing. It's what we expected. We're doing what we've wanted to do." So obviously it was that pressure around the ground, and the continuums, which is what they were doing the whole thing. Sloanie's influence was huge in that midfield. Absolutely huge. Because anytime he went off, that's when West Coast started to get that little bit extra. And he came back on. Whilst he might not have got a great number of touches, everything else, and they were hanging on to him, not letting him get near the ball. But his desire and his run and his chase, it just seemed to lift that team. And it was great to see. But that last quarter was superb. And the dude's goal. Oh, my God.
That was fantastic.
All right.
That was awesome.
I'm just going to take it down a notch, Nick, because I think you've just gotten a bit carried away there. Look, the first three quarters were horrific. And to say that we were pressuring them it's just not true.
We pressured out.
Were you at the ground?
One moment, please.
No, you weren't at the ground. I was at the ground and I was watching them pressure. I was watching us push them and make them switch out wide, making them waste energy, keeping them across that half back line, back and forth, not giving them the outlet kicks, those easy passages down the ground. They had to work for every forward entry they got.
Nikki, you keep saying you were at the ground. The game doesn't change because you're at the ground.
No, but what the camera show you does.
But we can see the detail, and
but you can't see the bigger picture. You don't see what's happening up the ground because the cameras get in too bloody close.
When you can't fucking kick to a teammate, you don't have to see the bigger picture. If you can't take a mark, if you can't handball, if you can't tackle, you don't have to see the bigger
Gibbsy couldn't bloody mark in those last couple of minutes. God, that was funny.
You don't need a bigger picture to see inefficiency.
All I'm saying is that by three-quarter time, we were down by 20 points and it blew out to 26 points at one stage there, and some of our key.
It was the most dominant last quarter in terms of inside 50s.
I'm going to have to mute you in a moment because I've given you a lot of time to talk, Nikki, and I'd like to have a moment if you don't mind. Okay. So it got out to 26 odd points, and some of the key stats that I felt were indicative of effort were a bit down up until three-quarter time. In particular, West Coast's ability to have uncontested possession. Our tackle count was low for the whole match, but it was particularly low in the first half. I think we only had something like 26 or 27 tackles in the first half. Our clearance numbers were healthy, but our tackles inside 50 count, again, was very low. So there are a couple of indicators early. It wasn't so much, I didn't think that we were lacking effort, but certainly what occurred sort of towards the back end of the third quarter and into the last, as far as I could see, was that we were just pushing up very high on them. And as you mentioned, Nick, starting to force their kicks wide. I didn't think that happened so much in the first half as it did after half time. Because our press went a lot higher as we were able to get more depth into our forward 50 entries. But, I think it doesn't signal to me a turning of the corner for Adelaide. I think it certainly signals maybe the team getting back into some semblance of confidence because I don't know how you guys feel, but when a bloke says, all right, don't worry about making mistakes. Just get the ball moving as quickly as you can. Be adventurous and all the rest of it. All of a sudden, it actually says to the playing group, "All right, well, it's okay. We can make a few mistakes." And once you start playing with that freedom, and start seeing it come off, it builds confidence. And you're playing with instinct, and that instinct can lead to a regaining of form. Macca, and that's what I felt happened as the game wore on, particularly into that last quarter, that as we started to become more instinctive with our ball pattern or ball movement and our running patterns, we started to hit targets, stick marks, stick tackles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Our self-belief was growing rapidly in that last quarter. As I said, there was a lot of hesitation and making wrong selections, etc. And they were actually just blocking us from going through the middle, so we were trying to go around the sides all the time, and of course that just played right into their hands.
Yeah.
And in the last quarter, we took that chance, and we did hit up somebody that might have had somebody 3 or 4 or 5 meters away from them, and just get them to lead at us and put it on their chest. And we took the chances in the last quarter. And that's how you do have to play if the team's going to put the type of press that they did put on us. They wanted us to go to the flanks, and when we were going to the flanks, of course, they dominated. I thought their midfield was very, very good. Shuey in particular was a real pain in the arse to us. He played very, very well. And Gaff, of course, Nicky, you said they had nowhere to go. Gaff was an outlet for them all the time.
It was noticeable that we started using the corridor in the last quarter, and I can't remember the last time we were adventurous enough to run the ball through the middle of the ground. Our switching was still a little slow, but we just some of that overlap run that's been missing for such a long time and was killing us against Hawthorn, for example, where we just couldn't clear our defensive 50. There's no doubt that having Letty back in the team and Luke Brown, who didn't get huge numbers, but I felt his inclusion was a real key for us. It just allowed a couple of other blokes just to get off the chain a little bit. Miller, I thought, ran really well.
He did
as well. So, I think the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating next Friday night, Macca. But let's
100% right.
Let's not dwell too much on the negatives, because it's fantastic to see the team up and about. And a few smiles. I think the group needed that win just for their own, internal issues more than anything else. See a few blokes get around each other, see Pike and the group interact positively. Sloaney after the match commented that they spent a lot of time during the break trying to get some joy back into the club. So there's clearly been a lot of pressure and a lot of issues, and as Phil used to say, probably a lot of man conversations required over the last, 7 to 14 days. And it was great to see that the blokes show a bit of spirit in the last.
Well, they did. They certainly did show some spirit. Another thing that has to be mentioned there is about Walker. I think Walker was pretty ordinary early in the game, and later, when he kicked that goal off the ground in the third quarter, I thought the last quarter he played the role that a captain should play, and a guy with his ability should play. He led in that last quarter, and that's what we needed that as well.
Reminded me a bit of Rennie taking off his knee brace.
Yes,
Macca.
Yeah.
Because Tex wasn't playing great. He was certainly trying very hard, and
he was trying a little bit too hard.
I think you might be right there, Nicky. I think he was so intent.
He needed to relax.
Yeah, so intent on getting the boys up and getting us over the line that you're right. I think at times he overplayed it a bit. Certainly that play on where he took a mark about 20 out and then played on and ended up muffing the snapshot. That was one of those instances where it was pure adrenaline. He just wanted to get around one bloke and snap, and all he needed to do was calm down and slot it through from 20. But, credit to him, he stuck to it, and he was a massive influence in that last quarter. It can't be denied, and one of the better games we've seen from Tex for quite some time.
The other comment I want to make is about the umpiring, in the sense that I knew this was going to happen. During the week, all this fuss about the home ground advantage that the noise of affirmation makes to the umpires, and in West Coast, and they quoted the figures, and it is only really West Coast on their home ground that get this massive advantage in the freeze. I mean, if you take, for example, not this week, but the week before, they had twice the number of frees that the opposition did after getting slaughtered. And I knew that what would happen is that the umpires would come here and we wouldn't get the frees that we should have got. In fact, they thought they were biased against us. And as has also been pointed out in the chat, 2 of the umpires were from Western Australia. Why would you appoint 2 Western Australian umpires to umpire a Western Australian team in Adelaide? I don't get it.
Well, Macca, here's how I think about it. It shouldn't matter whether the umpires are from WA, Victoria, Queensland, Papua New Guinea, as far as I'm concerned, because the rules are the rules and you're there to enforce them. And the thing that I notice, and Nikki, you might have a view on this as well, but from the comfort of my couch at home, Nick, it certainly felt like one particular umpire.
Dark-haired bloke, I know the one you mean.
Had a very different interpretation to the other 2, and it showed.
Oh my God!
It showed because Daniel Talia was getting absolutely towed up by this bloke, and down the other end, JJ probably put on about 2 inches around his biceps because he was carrying about 3 blokes around the forward half for the whole bloody game and never got a free.
Yep, correct.
To be fair, though, those calls on Talia were there. He was hanging on.
Yeah,
and he was hanging on early. But I agree, if you're playing that down one end, you've got to be consistent across the whole area. They were not. There were a lot of drops or throws from West Coast players that were just let go ahead of. And it was so blatant. So blatant.
I didn't think the umpiring was great anyway, but at that particular, the way their forward 50 was umpired compared to our forward 50 was chalk and cheese, and that's where I start getting. I mean, I can put up with a bad umpiring performance if it's kind of even across the ground, but when it's so distinctly different between one end and the other, it can really have an influence on the match.
Yep, and I'm glad we won the game so that I could talk about it, because I hate complaining about umpires when you lose, because it sounds like you're blaming them for the whole loss, whereas there would be many factors why you contributed to the loss yourself. But, we won it, but I was really, really unhappy with the umpiring, and in particular, that one particular umpire with the dark hair, and was he 26 or some number like that?
It was Margetts, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's his name, but
he's not that good.
Well,
when you get neutral supporters commenting on the umpiring, then there's something wrong.
Yeah,
hey, look,
I thought he was biased. He was biased.
Now, I've given you guys your head, so let's get back on track here. We've got to go through some head-to-head stats before we get carried away. Disposals, we ended up 30 up, and very much a kicking game from both teams. West Coast in particular, 216 kicks to 119 handballs. We were a little bit better than that, but both teams happy to kick the ball. West Coast took more marks around the ground, 89 to 79. However, contested marks, we won 18 to 10, which just shows that's what I was kind of talking about before, Nick, that we're allowing them just to chip around there for a while. Marks inside 50 were even. Tackles, as I mentioned, 53 to 81. That's still a bit of a worry. I didn't feel like we were at them for 3 quarters. And I reckon, I don't know the last quarter stats for tackles, but I reckon we might have got, 15 or so tackles, or even more, 20 maybe in that last quarter, because I think at half time it was like 27 tackles that we'd had, which just isn't enough. Sam Jacobs, the head-outs 40 to 47 don't tell the story, and we'll talk about Sauce when we get into the individuals, but Sauce was a standout, in my opinion.
He was.
He was terrific.
Yep. What else have we got here? Clearances. We won the clearances 44-34, up by 4 in the centre clearances and up by 6 around the ground. So, again, indicative. It kind of shows, doesn't it? Because they're not huge disparities, and yet Jacobs was able to give first use so often that I felt like what we've been saying about the opposition having more decisive clearances over the last month or two, guys, I feel like we had the more decisive and the more effective clearances this week, particularly in that last quarter, but irrespective of the stats.
There's no doubt about the Jacobs wound the clock back. He was against two guys who I regard as pretty good Ruckman in Nadanui, and even Lycett is a very reasonable tap ruckman. And Jacobs, that was easily the best. He timed his leap, if they call it that, the distance he gets off the ground, and it's not very high, but he did time it very well, and he used his body very well, and he positioned himself well, and he did give us quite often first use of the ball. And the stats that sort of stand out to me is that we did win the clearances. We inside 50s were nearly double.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that in a minute.
Okay, I'll leave that one to you.
Yeah.
But we did also win the contested possession. So we didn't win the tackles, but we did win contested possessions. And I think if you can win clearances and you can win contested possessions, it does help you very much on your way to winning a game.
Yeah, plus 29 on contested posies, and overall effective possessions were up by 10.
Yeah, the way he was tapping to different positions.
That was very noticeable, wasn't it, Nick? That he wasn't his usual, front left sort of position. He was a couple over the shoulder and a couple, palming off, like to the offside, on his right. It's very noticeable.
And is that Sloaney actually directing a bit more in the midfield?
It's possible. I mean, Gibbs got on the end of a couple of rippers.
There was one in the last quarter that was just superb when he was on the move.
Yeah,
it was just
the middle.
And it was the behind the back one.
Yeah,
he just knew he was going past.
Now, Mac had touched on a stat earlier, which is very confusing. And I've watched the game in parts again, and I still can't quite pinpoint it. West Coast had 46 to 20 rebound 50s. Our inside 50s were 66 to 34, so almost double. Our scores per inside 50s, 2.36 to 1.89. West Coast kicked their score, their 12 goals, on the back of 34 inside 50s. We kicked our score, notwithstanding we had 10 more scoring shots, but 66 inside 50s. Looking at the game, it wasn't as noticeable, and I was very surprised. And I don't know about you, Mac, and maybe I was asleep, but I was very surprised at that disparity. I didn't feel like the game was being played so much in our front half.
No, well, I did feel it was. It wasn't necessarily right in our goal square, but it'd be interesting if you drew a heat map of it. I'd say that it operated mainly from about our half forward line to just behind the centre line most of the time, and that. But because we didn't bring the ball in very well, and also they had men back as well. They dropped Waterman, I think it was, back loose in defence there. And at one stage they put another man back there as well. They had a certain, and PJ adds quite a lot of shallow entries, and I agree with that. That's because we were often clearing from that, as I said, just behind centre, and it's lobbing just inside the 50. And so, I did see it that way, because that actually gave them the opportunity a couple of times to get goals when they did the quick rebound over the top, and because it had been in our area for so long, all the players had drifted up perhaps higher than they should have drifted up, and when they got back there, I can remember one in particular by the young Aboriginal lad who's got a lot of ability.
Ryan.
Yeah, that's him. He got one.
He should have had a bloody free paid against him for the whack in the face.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I agree.
And they end up with a goal.
Yeah. Oh, I know the one you're talking about, Nicky, but
yep.
Coming back to the topic, though, I did see it that way, Phoenix.
Yeah, how about you, Nick? How did it feel at the ground?
So that was what I was talking about, that pressure, because you were seeing the chip back and forth across our forward line, because we pressured up the ground. We weren't giving them for most of the time. Occasionally they were going to get through, just because we know the team we've got out there and, what we've been lacking, etc. But it was that second kick up, the way we manned up, we put a press on them. We were really, really honest with just making sure we were fairly man on man. And then in that last quarter, they had to put McGovern down to the back lines. And all of a sudden, when they got the ball, they got 2 goals, and they were fast breaks. but any other time they got it, they didn't have McGovern to keep them honest up forward and being that really great direction. So we had Cheney behind the ball and he was just mopping everything up because they were having to do quick blind kicks out. And you looked how free our defence was because of that's what we were doing. And that's what I was really impressed with.
But I felt like we were zoning rather than a frontal pressure, Nick. And I felt like our defensive spread was better. But I didn't feel like we were sort of up in their faces.
We were making sure that they couldn't get that fast break most of the time. So they were, as often is the case, you've often got that they've got an extra player in the back lines, just like we've got an extra player in the back line. So your forwards, when they're trying to put that pressure on, they're manning up. One of them's often manning up two players instead of one. So it's standing in that position so that you can cover either, you can get across, okay, he might mark it, but you're going to get across so they can't get a quick possession off and they've got to go back and make a decision. And the number of times did you see they would go across the ground and then they had to switch it back again because they switched it across and there was nothing there because we'd covered up the ground. And the majority of that across the midfield was actually more man on man.
I mean,
and then we had that mix in the back line of a bit of zoning, but still being close enough to then go to the man on man as we needed. It was quite good to see. And that's why I said I felt that I had that confidence that we could possibly do this, even though we would have to kick, in one quarter.
Double our score, basically.
Double our score. But then again, I'm looking at the forward going, we've kind of got some players we can do that with. We just needed to get better at delivery into the forward line because we were getting our fair share.
Yeah, I didn't quite see it the same way as you, Nikki. I didn't think we put massive pressure on them. I thought we were more zoning, as Fiend said. And then, of course, if you do zone, it does get into a situation where it does create contests as well if they're not 100% spot on with their kick. So in that sense, you're right. We probably were scratching and clawing, all right. But I think the essential way we had a press and a zone. There's no doubt about that. Because, I see some Brayton Beck who disagrees with most things. Says closing space is pressure. Well, yes, it is, but
no, we're not talking about closing space. So we're talking about guarding space.
Yeah, I think that's how we did it.
Look, and I felt like at times we were getting in our own way in terms of our own ball movement, and I felt like Simpson persevered too long with McGovern down back because I feel like they just lost a lot of drive off their half back line as much as they were clearing the ball. Out there, he's quite a decisive player, and he tends to cut through zones a little bit with his disposal. And I just felt like it was the wrong move. I could see why they did it. They wanted marking power, but my fear before the game was that they were going to get us on the outside with their class, and their mid-side forwards were just going to clean us up because I felt like we looked a little bit top-heavy. And I don't feel as if Simpson took advantage of that, to be honest.
No, I thought there's no doubt that our guys in defence did work very, very hard. There's no doubt about that because Gaff was providing a lot of run through there. The number of times that they used Gaff, they switch it across and find Gaff, and then he would run. But our boys in the back line, they did while they were zoning, they did close the space very, very quickly. And I thought that I suppose that's why, Nikki, you were talking about pressure, because they did in that sense.
Yeah, and I was actually quite pleased with how Hartigan was playing on McGovern because he's a bloody good player, and I thought that was a great contest to watch. That was really absorbing. So even though McGovern, like a couple of his goals he got, and I'm still looking going, I don't think Hartigan could have done anything better in those situations.
One of them was just a snap off out of the pack.
And he still had done really well to Hartigan, that is, to try and nullify the contest and not make it easy, He played well.
Yeah.
Until he tried to kick the ball. That was a bit of a worry.
I always said you can't let the guy think.
Yeah. Look, I I felt Hartigan did all right too. And there's a big difference if you're a marking player, irrespective of how good you are. There's a big difference between being the bloke having to initiate the lead and take the mark in an attacking sense or in an attacking context, rather than being the bloke that can follow up on a forward and just come over the top with a spoil or whatever. And I feel like when McGovern plays up forward, he often doesn't run to the right spots. Whereas get him one-on-one in defence, where he's basically following a forward or dropping in the hole or whatever, he gets a bit more opportunity to read the ball. Now, I don't particularly like McGovern up forward for that. No,
waste of a good player in that sense, because in the back lines he reads the play incredibly well, and his judgment of his marks is fantastic. But
and he makes really good decisions actually coming out of defence, Macca, and delivering into the forward line. I think that's what they missed.
But when he's up forward, he's the one that's got to make that play rather than wait for it to happen and react to it. So it's a totally different ball game.
Yep. Look, let's go through some individual stats, shall we? Because it was nice to see a few blokes back hitting a little bit of form. Rory Laird, just like as if he'd never stopped playing, just comes back and gets a lazy 32, 13 and 19, 8 marks, a tackle. Don't start interrupting me, Macca.
Sorry.
I'm very sensitive.
You are. PMT?
No, after Barry Hall, I'm not talking about anything to do with those sorts of things. 2 inside 50s, 2 rebound 50s, only the 5 contested posies, but went at 87.5. When you haven't watched Rory play for a couple of weeks, and then he comes back in, you just notice how well he reads the play, and he always puts himself in the right positions.
That little human stump, he is incredible. He just plays
the desk.
He plays like he's the desk. That's right. He plays like he's 6'6", and yet he's not. He's just an incredibly good, courageous player who reads the ball beautifully. He had a great game.
Yeah, he was helping. I think just having him in the back lines, and particularly him and Brown. And there was a couple of times there was that fast little, okay, you're about to be closed down. Oh, I'm here next. Oh, he's there. That they just kind of kept moving it around till they could get that freeness to get the kick out. And it's just the maturity that they show in their decision making in doing that. And I think he had to do a bit more because we didn't have Kelly, because Kelly was being used on the wing.
I'll talk about Kelly in a minute. Matty Crouch returned to some semblance of form after a couple of weeks back in following the hammy.
In the last quarter.
Yeah, 12 and 20 for 32. Took a mark. 9 tackles, though, which is excellent. 4 inside 50, 6 clearances. 20 contested possessions. That's a team and a game-high 20 possessions for Matty Crouch. And a bit of a flip for him because we've seen him more outside the contests over the last month or so, but he was back inside on Saturday night. Only went at 62.5, but I felt overall his ball use and particularly by foot was a little bit more decisive than it has been. And 8 score involvements too, with 8 intercept possessions. Nice to see Matty looking like he's running back on top of the ground a bit now.
He was frustrating the hell out of me in those first couple of quarters, though, because he was back to that whole, I'm going to get it and I'm just going to turn and handball backwards to somebody because I don't want it, that we've been lamenting about since he's kind of come back. And the last quarter, he just started moving forward and kicking it. And we're like, thank you. That's the one we saw it last year. And he started that was back.
I was happy his whole game, Nicky, because of the fact that he was at least getting the ball, and I think Phoenix is right because he a lot of that ball's contested as well. He was back in the inside there, boring away, and I really liked his game. I thought he was sort of back to the type of game that gives us a good value for his touches. And also the other thing I did want to mention just in passing was the fact that. But, there was a lot of hoo-ha when Vince was traded so that we could get the draft pick that we got him for. I noticed that Vince didn't even make the 22 for Melbourne list this week. And Matty Crouch is one of our very best.
I don't think there's any doubt that we won on that trade. As much as I like Bernie, I think we won out on that. Bryce Gibbs, interesting game. He got 28 touches, 17-11, 2 marks, 4 tackles, 9 inside, 56 clearances, 12 contested possessions, went at nearly 79%, 7 score involvements, and gained a team high 550 metres, and also a game high 500. Oh no, second only to Hutchings, and 5 intercepts. And yet, at times, I felt like Bryce wasn't very damaging with ball in hand. I mean, they're exceptional numbers, and yet that doesn't really seem to describe the game that I watched.
Well, I can tell you now, I would say that the coach gave him shit at halftime. He would have said, because his first half was shocking, absolutely shocking. He was in the wrong position most of the time, and he was actually hanging out a lot, and he wasn't going in hard for the ball. In the second half, there's no doubt he increased his endeavours to get the ball quite dramatically, and I thought he played a good second half, but Pikey, I reckon, would have ripped into him at halftime.
No, I don't think it was that, Macca. I think it was they changed the setup. Because we've commented just before about how Crouch was being more outside and he was more inside. And because we didn't have Cam Ellis-Yolman playing, so Crouch had to go back in a bit more inside. So what we did was actually trying to be Bryce to be a bit more outside whilst Matt was being inside. That's what was happening there. We made some adjustments in the second half and it paid off. That play he did in the last quarter where he's surrounded by 4 West Coast players and he's just like, I'm just going to run between all 4 of you. Just that calmness of being able to, and the delivery he then did was just superb. I was quite pleased with his game watching it at the ground. I thought he was being very proactive and that's showing up in those stats that you quoted, Phoenix.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly not unhappy with him being proactive. I just felt like his disposal. I don't know.
He still does that Carlton. I just have to kick it forward and hope. I think that's maybe still in there. I think he's still kind of learning our patterns a bit.
Yeah,
and as to where to kick, and as Buddy Magic's pointed out, Gibbs was forward at times.
Yeah,
I really like the start of the last quarter. We put Hugh in the midfield at the start of the last quarter, and we had Gibbs on the half-forward line. That's what helped that spark.
Well, I think that was one of the benefits of having Sloaney back in the team. It allowed us to be a little bit more creative with our midfield rotations. Rather than just, on and off the bench, I think we were able to rotate a bit through the forward half as well.
And I was really pleased they never ever put Hampton in the midfield. They just kept him up forward. I was really pleased with that because he's a liability in the midfield.
No, he's not. Played some really good games in the midfield, Nicky. That's a silly thing to say.
Not the
Silly
way he's
thing
been
to
playing
say.
lately.
Silly thing to say.
He led contested possessions in the first 8 games last year, Nicky, when he was in the midfield.
Yeah, but he doesn't bloody defend.
Oh, it's pressure acts and contested ball numbers are excellent. Anyway, he didn't play there, so we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, he hasn't been that good in the SNFL on those stats from what I've been seeing, watching him.
SNFL, I've given that up on that as being an indicator. Richie Douglas, interesting game because I was all over him in the first half. I thought he was pathetic.
Agreed.
And then in the second half, particularly towards the end of the third and into the last, he started to pick his game up. 13-9 though. Isn't enough, really. 22 touches, 4 marks, 3 tackles, 3 inside, 56 clearances, 12 contested. So his numbers certainly picked up. 5 score involvements, 350 metres gained. Turned it over a little bit. But, game of 2 halves.
Definitely.
Well, the comment from our group at halftime was he was probably one of our better players. So what does that say? We thought he was actually quite influential in trying to get the ball forward, and he was doing some nice things in that kind of part of it. But there was the delivery issues into our forward lines.
You sure you guys didn't have those mushrooms? Nikki?
There was some nice. I think there was a bit of Kilkenny and Guinness that was being drunk beforehand, but that wasn't by me.
I'm starting to wonder. No, seriously, I have to agree with Phoenix. Douglas was very, very quiet in the first half.
Yeah, we'll just get past text for a minute. We'll go to Tom, who I thought was excellent. 11-11 for 22. Jide, 5 marks, which surprised me. I thought he took a few more. 3 tackles, 3 rebound 50s, 8 contested, went at 86.5%, 3 1%ers, 5 score involvements, including his first from the boundary there. 11 intercept possessions, though, which is excellent. I know they're all talking about Stevenson, but gee whiz, for a first-year lad, he's fantastic.
I think, honestly, he does deserve to win the Rising Star Award, in my opinion, because he has won his position, I think, in virtually all but about one game this year. And in my opinion, I mean, every bit as good as Lever. To us, there has been, I don't think, any noticeable loss in Lever.
And Stevenson's surrounded by how many other players in that midfield, Nupford and Collingwood, that are helping him, as opposed to somebody like Jide, who's playing in a backline that is in a team that is, half and half and wins and losses and not playing well, which means the ball's getting down in that area a lot more. There's a lot more pressure. And as you said, Phoenix, he's probably lost one game in terms of position.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Nicky. And, I think it's easy to get, kicks on the ball, etc. But when you're in the back lines, you've got a lot of accountability. And so you can do a lot of good things. And then if you make a couple of errors, it shows up and you get a big debit against your name. And for me, I've really loved his season. And I think, and I know that the guys are saying Stevenson will probably get it a lot because he's a Victorian and Eddie will make sure. And they're probably right. But all I'm saying is that, in my opinion, I think that our guys deserved it.
Well, put it this way, whether he wins or not, we haven't lost anything across that half-back line with Tom.
And I think we've actually probably gained a bit more.
Look, I'd agree with you, actually, Nikki, and that's not to discredit Jake because he is a very good player and he's obviously made a difference to that Melbourne side and they're missing him at the moment. But I feel like he's a little bit one-dimensional, whereas Tom, I think, has got a couple more strings to his bow. He looks a more natural player, if you ask me. Not unhappy at all with that whole outcome. But let's look. I've absolutely come on.
Just on his goal, that was so much pressure. And how calm was he?
He didn't seem to feel the pressure at all.
No.
He certainly didn't seem to, anyway. All right.
I just hope we can make finals because I think he will just be outstanding in finals at some stage.
At some stage next year. I've smashed Sauce over the last month or so.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
So really?
Credit where it's due. Credit where it's due. And it just shows to me that the poor bloke needed a break.
Yep.
Because how much better did he look? He was moving more freely. He seemed fresher in his mind. He was getting involved when the ball was on the deck. A little bit of that link play that we love so much. 18 possessions, 11 kicks, a couple of marks, 39 hit-outs, kicked a goal. Look, I just felt like that was the Sauce that we know, and we probably haven't seen for 6 months, I reckon.
Yeah, he also had that back problem as well, and just that week off, I think, has given him a chance to recover a little bit from that as well. But I mean, the last game he played before the break was an absolute stinker, and you were quite right when you really got into him. But it was good to see him back to what the guy that we've always loved and rated because he is good at his best. He's a very, very good ruckman.
And because we were very bewildered as to why they weren't playing O'Brien, and now we know that he'd been carrying a shoulder injury, so they didn't want to play him in the AFL, obviously, because of that.
They still had options, Nick. Let's not go down that road. They needed to give Sam a break in a couple of games.
Yeah, they did. but Hunter's out injured. Deer's hurt his knee, and who else have we got?
Yeah, well, Deer hadn't done his knee back when Source needed a break. And Hunter, I don't think, had done his ankle either. But anyway.
Yeah, he had. Hunter's been out for quite a while.
Anyway, look, Source needed a rest. He got the rest during the bye, and he reminded us why he's valuable when he's playing well. Seasman, I thought, was serviceable too, although he didn't get as much as the ball as he possibly could have. 13 and 5 for 18, 3 marks, 4 inside 50s. Disposal efficiency was pretty crap, 55%. So, probably an average game for Seed, but he did a couple of nice things there towards the end.
What was his overall distance gained?
It was only 482, so not terrible, but not great by his standard. Well, not huge. I mean, Tex had 462 by comparison, although most of those were 60-metre bombs for goal.
Yeah, so that is down on, because he's been doing a lot of 600s and even up to 700, in one game. It's down a bit. He was useful. He was a useful player, and I'm surprised about the efficiency rating because it certainly didn't strike me that way during the game.
No, not really. Look, Huey as well. I felt like he was in and out of the game, but really came to the fore in the last quarter again. 12 and 6 for 18, 3 marks, kicked a goal, 5 tackles, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 12 contested posies. Pardon me. Disposal efficiency also down, but I felt like after a slow start, well, we all started slow, but I felt like after a slow start, he came good towards the end there.
Yeah, he had a great last quarter.
How did he look at the game, Nick? Nick's gone.
Where's she gone?
No, she's had a gutful.
No, I'm here.
Oh. No.
Sorry.
See, I've suspected for a while that you step away from the podcast where me and Mac are crapping on. So
No. I pressed the wrong button, the push to talk one. It obviously, even though it's the same kind of the symbol on the other side, that one doesn't work because I've got 2 cats trying to sit on me, so I've had to move the laptop around.
We caught you eating your mushroom, Nikki.
No, I've been listening. For me, it was what you said about Huey just being a bit in and out. But there was that. I think we've kind of done this before where we seem to have given him that little bit of rest in the middle of the game so he can go a bit blunter in that last quarter when everybody else gets tired. They were deliberately putting a lot quicker players on him, and West Coast trying to exploit him, and that was happening earlier in the game. And once we'd really started to wear them out with that, making them kick back and forth and run and chase around, that he was then able to use his lack of pace, but how clever he is in terms of his body positioning, etc. And that pass from Gallucci and the way he marked the ball to protect it was just superb.
Yep, agree. Look, Miller again when he was off halfback looked really good. 11 and 7 for 18, 5 marks, 3 rebound 50s, really good disposal efficiency, 94%. It's his spot at halfback, isn't it?
Yeah, and he is going to be a very good player in the long run. But he's got that. He has that ability to have more time than most people. And at this stage, he still looks like he's a bit of a baby playing the game. He hasn't got it totally mastered yet. But, when it all comes together for him, I think he's going to be very, very good because players that have ability to create time and space are always very, very good players.
Come on, Nick.
Sorry, I was typing something.
For God's sake.
You're on a podcast, not in a chat room. Let them chat amongst themselves.
Okay.
We're talking about the cats trying to sit on it, for God's sake.
No, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that Miller off the halfback line. As we've said, pretty much all year. Let him run straight at the ball, and it's just going to be so beneficial. He was matched up against mostly Liam Ryan, I think, and it was it was very tiring for him. He seemed to be blowing up a bit in the first quarter. So whether that just that little bit back from the break didn't quite help him. But he really started to get into that game in the last quarter. He did some beautiful passes.
Yeah. Now, some might be surprised, but I reckon this next guy was just about our best, actually. Daniel Talia. He only got the 15 touches, only took the 3 marks, 4 inside 50s. Went at 86%, 14 1%ers though, and 6 intercepts. I just felt like he was a rock, and had he not been bent over by that umpire, I think he would have been a standout best, but I certainly had him in our best 3.
Very, very high up. He played a great game, and he always does. He knows nothing but to give 100%. And Nikki, you said that he was mauling the guy and all the rest of it, but
no, he wasn't mauling, but he did hang on. They were there.
But the two decisions that led to goals, even Brian Taylor, who I always get the impression absolutely hates us, made the comment that and we're watching the replay each time, they weren't.
Taylor wasn't commentating.
I beg your pardon.
No, we didn't have BT. We had Hudson and...
we had Hudson, Dunstall and...
Rory. No, Dunstall. My apologies.
Dunstall doesn't hate us.
Well, I didn't think that he was really for us, but he actually made the comment each time, and I take it back because Brian Taylor wouldn't have. But he made the comment each time that there wasn't enough in it for a free kick.
Yeah, there normally isn't, but by the letter of the law, they're there. So I do agree that they were bloody harsh. And as Phoenix pointed out, that there were similar ones going on down in our forward line and not being paid. And that's kind of what gets us riled up. But at the time when I'm looking at it, the replay going, it was there. He did grab hold early. And that's often, they're being a bit more mindful of that, unfortunately. But there's not much that... you can really do as a defender. That's what you're going to do, unfortunately. But I wouldn't put him best. For me, I think it might be Sauce, but you're correct, Phoenix. He was pretty much up there.
Yeah, he was up there. I wouldn't have had him best either, but he was. But he's always gives a great game, in my opinion, and he would be right up there.
Yeah,
I think the only player who's ever really beaten him is Kennedy.
Kennedy is good.
Yeah, he does have trouble with Kennedy, but I just felt like
he's the only one.
Tales had the possibility of being exposed on Saturday night because he didn't really have a great matchup. I just felt like he was very, very, very good. Good to see Rory Sloane back. I felt he struggled at times with the pace of the game, but as usual, gave it 1,000,000%. Only got the 14 touches, but 8 tackles. And 7 clearances with 13 contested possessions. So that's the kind of thing you want someone who's not maybe in so good a form to be doing, just at the coalface, doing the hard things. And I think, assuming he pulls up well, I think that's a good starting point for Rory for the second half of the season.
Yeah, it gives him something to kick off from, doesn't it? Because, and in fairness too, he hadn't played... I think he's round 4 was his last game, and that's a long, long time ago. And this was round 15, and with a bye in between. Yes, I know that we were arguing about that pre the game. I was wrong. And so that's 12 weeks. So the guy hadn't played for 12 weeks, and he's gone straight back into the side. And obviously, nobody just jumps straight into it and goes 100%. And he'll be 100% better for that particular game. In fact, he was getting better as the game went on. So, and as Nicky once correctly said, he was throwing his body and went in very, very hard, and for the ball. So, he's just going to get better and better.
On the 14 possessions, it's a bit hard to get more when you've got a human backpack on you for pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, not nice. Simpson tagging him bloody first up after a spell.
But I think that brings Rory, that kind of gets him a little bit fired up in a way to then, I mean, it doesn't take much to get him fired up and to go back, but I think he was being very clever knowing that. And it was pleasing to see that when he's been tagged, there's been issues with how he can influence the game. And I think that even though he only got the 14 possessions, I think there was a lot of his influence. He was figuring out how not to beat the tag to get those possessions, but how to beat that tag to still influence the game.
Yeah. Look, of the rest, I felt Curtly Hampton did okay, considering he was in a role that he probably wouldn't have been used to as a defensive forward.
I'm happy with his game.
Yeah, 14 touches, 3 marks, kicked a nice goal, 5 tackles, and 9 contested posies.
And the seed sealer, it was Hampton's work, the bottom of the pack. So when Seed kicked that goal, half those forwards went to Hampton first to congratulate him.
Yeah, it was a really deft little touch and or a little smother there, or interception there. So, no, look, a lot of people bag Curtly. I like him, and I'm happy he's in the side, and it'll be interesting to see how they use him going forward. D-Mac provided the turning point of the game when he went off. Had 10 and 2
stop
for
it.
No, that's unfair.
He's going to be out for many weeks for those ribs.
Yeah, didn't look good at all. He looked in a bit of strife, actually. He had 12 posies, 3 marks. His numbers
Should
are
have
actually...
had a free.
Yeah, why? Because he got tackled.
He was dumped to the ground after he disposed of the ball by Shuey.
He was, actually.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, it should have been a free kick.
Possibly.
Not possibly, should have.
Yeah, okay. Should have. Look, Josh Jenkins, I thought, worked hard without much reward, but kicked
He missed Eddie.
Kicked a couple of goals.
He missed Eddie. Because our other small forwards, we had playing up higher. So he was bringing that ball to ground, and that's when West Coast were able to push it out because he didn't have that small forward around his feet like he normally would to take advantage.
But the one thing we do have to give him some credit for, because, I mean, Bean and I, we were really into him when he was playing that very, very soft football. But you know, he is trying 100% at the moment. I've got
no doubt,
no qualms about him at all.
Took a nice contested mark and looked like he just about surprised himself when he ended up with the ball in his hands there.
Shocked me.
No, look, I've got no problems with how Josh is playing at the moment, and I felt like he copped a fair amount of attention on the weekend, so no dramas with that. I'd like to see him get more of it, but you know, 2-2 and sort of did enough, I think, but you'd like a bit more.
I did like him up against Nat Nui in the ruck. I thought he actually did pretty good against him.
I think Nat Nui's carrying it back or something. He couldn't jump. Look, I thought Paholke was all right. I thought Luke Brown, despite not getting a huge amount of the ball, was integral to our backline looking a little bit more settled. Hardigan was great in the air, muffed a few kicks under pressure, but as I've said to you before, Macca, I think we need to accept what we get with Kyle, and I felt like he did his primary job well.
I had a good game.
Yep.
Had a good game.
The Gooch, there's a couple of things that Gooch does every week where you think, oh, wow, that's good. And he broke clear with pace through the midfield in that last quarter on an occasion, and it just felt a lot of players would have been caught, and he was able to shrug the tackle and continue on forward. And he shows something, Galucci.
I loved, there were 3 times, he saw who was chasing, went, oh, it's Nat Nui, and then just took off.
But
we know Nat Nui's fast, and he was just like, "Nah, I got you."
You look at his stats, and they're not outstanding, but there is something special about this lad. He's got brilliant acceleration, he's got pace, and he's got the ability to do beautiful kicks from a bending over position. You know, like his body is actually, he's running flat out, and he's about to get grabbed, but he doesn't wait till he straightens up to kick the ball. He's actually crouched over the ball and still does a lovely kick.
Because he's getting lower for the perfect drop, Macca. That's what it is. He's getting that nice, perfect drop on the ball, so it doesn't matter what position his body's in. But what I like about him is he's actually ambidextrous. He's both sides.
Yes, he is. The games we've been putting into him and Paholke, they will get rewards for that in the long term because these boys are now. I mean, Paholke's starting to look like he fits a bit. He's not frightened one little bit.
And Paholke's got sticky hands.
Yep. Yeah. He has got good hands, Nicky.
Yeah.
And Colucci's got the pace, so they've got assets, and I think they're going to be good players for us in the years to come.
Yeah, I agree. Macca, I think, they're playing bit roles at the moment. They're peripheral to the main event. But when it's their turn, I think they're making a good account of themselves, those two youngsters. Cole Chaney did all right. He's just there for a reason, and I think he's fulfilling his purpose without anything special at the moment. Jake
nice
Kelly.
mark, though.
Yeah, nice mark. He's good at those. Jake Kelly was okay. You reckon he was
Paul
playing...
Parker was playing on a wing.
Yeah, that's definitely out of position for Jake. So did that happen after D-Mac went down, or what was the deal there?
Nope, because we didn't have Atkins and Wilson was out, so our wing rotation. So McKay was part of that as well, but Kelly was part of the wing rotation.
He was, yeah, which is why
because we know he's got that tank. He's got a midfielder's tank. He's got that.
Yeah, he got caught on the turnover a couple of times.
He did. Yeah, he did because he doesn't have the speed.
No.
But I think it seemed to be we were using him to really try and counter more as a defensive wingman. So I wasn't too unhappy with that because it's not his natural position.
I think we'd be talking more about Jake's game if we'd lost. In fact, there's probably 3 or 4, if we were to be perfectly honest, that we would be talking more about if we'd lost the game because...
True.
When you actually look at... We only had, 6 players over 20 posies for the match, and that included Tex and Tom. So, after Matty Crouch and Bryce Gibbs, it really fell away in the midfield. Douglas sort of redeemed himself in the last quarter, as did Hugh Greenwood. But we had we had a lot of sub 15 possession winners. So, yeah, I'm just conscious of not like at the end of the game, you're all up and about and all the rest of it. When you actually look at it in the cold hard light of day, we played 3 pretty average quarters of football. I'm not talking about effort, Nick. I'm talking about execution.
Yeah, we had some poor execution.
And I felt like we sort of forced ourselves to gain a little bit of confidence there in the last quarter and hopefully inject a little bit of life into the season. But we've still got a lot of problems, I think.
Yeah, a couple of players we didn't mention. Luke Brown, I was going to say, as I've always said, I would hate to stand Luke Brown. It's very hard to get a kick on that guy. He may have only had 11 possessions. I was looking at his possessions, but he just doesn't let the other guy get a kick.
I think Rioli thought, I'm going to run away from you and get this ball and do the turn around and kick into goal. I was trying to think which quarter it was. I think it was in the second. And Brownie's just with him the whole time and bumped him off the ball and got possession of himself and got it out. And I think you can kind of see Woolley just going, how did that happen? Yeah. Luke Brown. That's how that happened.
Anyway.
Quality half-back. And the other one, Fogarty, too. He has his moments. And this is a great experience for the guy. Again, it's not necessarily a massive contribution now, but it'll all pay back in the long run.
Yeah. Well, we've probably talked that to death, so let's go through our award, shall we? First of all, Our breakout award for our young guy. Probably not much contest on this one, is there? Has to be Tommy Today again.
I know, but I want to give an honourable mention, I think, to the Gooch. Yeah. I think his composure and some of that delivery, particularly in that last quarter. And there was we didn't talk about it. So we've talked about that kick to Greenwood, which was just absolutely superb. There was another one where he's coming in off the half forward line, balls up in the air to be contested, and he just jumps in the air for such a small guy. We know we've heard about that huge leap he's got because he's played volleyball. But just that little take, hit the ground, run, bang into our forward line again. I mean, he's got some really nice weapons. So I would like to give him an honourable mention.
Yeah, I think a few more touches out of Jordan, where he can actually influence the game across the four quarters, would see him figure more highly. I think Tom Didé, though, is an integral part of our defence, and he's hit the ground running. And look, I'm with the people that think that Stevenson gets an easy ride from who's around him in that Collingwood team. To me, Tom Didé came into this team under a massive amount of pressure with Lever going, and has slotted in so well that you forget this is his first season. He's only played 15 games or whatever. So anyway, let's have a look at our Jet of the Week, shall we? Because there might have been a couple of contenders here.
You're gonna get what you need. Gonna get what you need. You're gonna get what you need. You're gonna get what you need.
Now, I've put up my hand for Talia, although I'm quite happy for Sauce.
Sauce for me.
Yeah, same. When you can keep Nick Nat to 8 disposals, and the delivery he was giving our midfielders, and there were some really lovely little passes around the ground he was doing as well. What was his disposal efficiency for Jacobs?
Jacobs had 72%, 13 contested, 6 uncontested, 13 effective disposals.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah.
It is a good
I
game.
think it's got to go to Sauce for that.
Yep.
Well, say that. I mean, Rory Laird would have to be a contender as well, I would have thought, because he was a bit of a rock, particularly in the first half when we were just caving in all over the place. I felt like Laird really shone in that first half.
Well, basically, it's had in my opinion, it's probably had a Crouch, Walker, Jacobs, Laird, and to a lesser degree Taylor, but probably the top 4. But Jacobs really did get the ball rolling in the centre of the ground and then around the pack, so he gets my vote this week.
Yeah, we haven't actually. I skipped over Tex because I want to talk about him at the end, and then I forgot. So let's just spend a moment on Tex now. 17 and 5 for 22 disposals. Took 10 marks, 3 goals, 4 inside 50s. He had 11 contested possessions, 8 score involvements. Let's just and also 4 contested marks as well. Let's just acknowledge that was a real captain's game, and as we mentioned right at the beginning, and whilst he probably overtried a bit in the first half, if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have won that game in the last quarter.
Spot on.
Yeah, that is true.
Can I also give him absolute credit for duping that West Coast player into giving the ball to him, and then he drops his arms really quickly going, well, it's not my ball.
Yeah.
He's not dumb.
Well, let's just say he's street smart, shall we?
I was going to say, I think he's trying to get another debate.
Yeah.
He talks like a broken Hillbogan,
Now, this will be interesting.
but the boy knows his footy.
I wonder who we're going to pick for the Wake Up Award this week. Oh, I don't know.
Well, we haven't got Atkins this week.
No,
Yeah, I know.
It makes it really hard, doesn't it?
Can I pick on Atkins for the Wake Up Awards still in the SANFL? Because my God, was he still stupid.
He stunk it up, did he?
Oh, yeah.
I was leaning towards Jake Kelly.
I think it's got to be adding the 22 players out there, and I think probably Jake's going to get it.
The other one, despite his numbers, I was just so disgusted with Richard Douglas's first half that I'm almost inclined to still give it to him, even though he did wake up in the last quarter.
I think he must be wrong. It must be wrong because Mrs. Macca's agreeing with you.
Oh, Mrs. Mack is a very good judge.
We like Mrs. Macca. She can have my vote because I don't want to vote for either of them.
All right, well, we'll agree to disagree on that one. Probably Jake Kelly, but, it's hard to give a wake-up award after such a rousing win. Nikki, it's your turn.
Underground, overground, wumbling free.
Go for it.
So I mentioned earlier that I would like to nominate Port for the scoreless quarter against Carlton because I think that was kind of funny, which is part of the intention of the cock-wobbling number. It was supposed to be something stupid, but also something that makes us laugh. Unfortunately, most of them seem to make us angry. I think the Melbourne supporters and their reaction are freaking hilarious. I do love the AFL Nation, so lovely Hutchie, your favourite person, Phoenix, who had to delete their tweet at the end of the Melbourne St Kilda game because it reads, full time, Melbourne hang on, another round 15 thriller. Melbourne 117, St Kilda 119. Yeah, no. So that was a bit stupid. But I think it has to go to not just Barry Hall, but I think Triple M. And that whole crew, Mark Howard has proven before he's an idiot. Yeah, that whole thing with Barry Hall was just stupidity.
Well, I can't.
And that guy is in the Hall of Fame, and when that happened, we're all like, "How did that happen?"
Well, I mean, what they did, they tried to rebrand Barry Hall. And the only reason he got into the bloody Hall of Fame is because they'd almost pulled it off. But
and then he had to go and be himself.
Yeah, well, exactly right. He tripped over himself. That's what it turned out. I've never been a fan of Barry Hall. I think he's a thug. I think he's a meathead, and he proved it. The bloke that needs to go as well, I think, is Lee Montagna. And once Mrs. Montagna gets wind of him airing her medical procedures in public, I wouldn't mind betting he gets a punch in the face.
Well, yeah, it's quite disgusting, really, because of the fact that I don't know why Montagna would be talking about and in such personal detail to a guy like Barry Hall in the first place. And Barry Hall didn't let him down by showing how bloody stupid he is. And I mean, I'm a very free-minded person, but I wouldn't even make those comments even at a guy's night.
No.
They're just not comments that you would make.
No.
And so, I think what Barry Hall has done with this comment, he has really shown us the total lack of class that he's got as a human being, that he's a very low level of human being.
Yeah, agreed.
And for me, it's such a pity because Montagna was one I've really enjoyed his commentary.
Yeah, but he's always been a bit of a loose cannon, though, Nick.
He has, particularly to do with women. But listening to him in the AFLW, really respectful. He was a great commentator. He's made some really, really good comments. I've enjoyed listening to him this year. But that was, once again, if you go back to what happened when he was St Kilda as a player, the particular investigation that happened, which, of course, nothing did eventually come of it, but he was one of those players involved in that. There is some, and I'm going to say those two lovely words, which a lot of people don't like, but some toxic masculinity. It is that whole thing of the way that women are treated as an object.
I read somewhere
and to me, that's what it comes down to there.
Yeah, I read a good comment on Twitter this afternoon that said, paraphrasing, I should say, a lot of people these days, it's easy enough to be respectful towards your wife and your daughters and women that are in your life directly. It's a lot harder to be respectful to women in general, and I think Lee...
And it shouldn't be.
Well, it shouldn't be, but I guess what I'm getting at is that there's still a little bit of way to go, I guess, for some people.
Unfortunately, Phoenix, for a lot of people.
Yeah, well.
Anyway. As a female, for a lot of people, unfortunately. But I think, it's got to go to not just Barry Hall, but Triple M in itself, the producers who were involved in that segment, because most of the time, those discussions are pre-planned.
Well, Howard was part of it. Damien Barrett was part of it. A couple of big names out of their stable. It'll be very interesting to see if they go any further with that.
Well, Barrett's trying to go, saying it was really horrible and disgusting. I think he's trying to
bullshit,
distance
is
himself. Yeah. No, dude, you were there laughing.
Anyway, we've got to wind this up, guys. It's 1 hour 30, which is long enough for people to be listening to us. Thanks, everyone, for being on the chat.
But it was a win.
It was a win, which was fantastic. Don't forget Tuesday Night Live, 8:30 Central on Tuesday night. Tweet us, Facebook us, visit our website, and we'll see you then. Good night, all.
Yep, good night all.
Night.